$3. That's the whole cost. $3 in a jug from your own kitchen cabinet, and it kills weeds dead. Picture it. It's Saturday morning. The coffee's still warm in your hand. You walk out onto the patio. The air is cool. The grass is wet. And for 1 second, everything looks perfect. Then you see them, the cracks in your driveway, stuffed with green. That fence line choked. That gravel path you cleared 3 weeks ago, already swallowed again. And you can feel your weekend disappearing. Here's who's quietly working against you. The man in the orange apron at the big box store. He's not a bad guy, but he's been trained to walk you straight to the most expensive jug on the shelf, the one with the brand name you already know, the one that costs $19.99. He never tells you the Amish have been doing this for over 100 years with 3 ingredients that cost almost nothing. He's not allowed to. That's not on his script. And you feel it every single year, don't you? That same tired loop. You spray, they die, you relax. And 6 weeks later, they're back. Thicker, meaner, in the exact same spots, like they're laughing at you. You spend the money, you spend the Saturday, and by August, your driveway looks like you never touched it. Most people attack this the wrong way. They buy the priciest weed killer they can find. They spray on a windy afternoon. They blast the leaves and then walk away feeling like they won. And nothing changes because the weeds keep marching back like they own the place. So here's what I'm going to show you. 2 completely different battlefields because weeds in your gravel and cracks need a totally different attack than weeds buried inside your living lawn. And almost nobody tells you that. And then, at the very end, I'm going to give you the one thing that stops both of them from ever coming back. The approach this entire video was built around, the thing the Amish actually understand that the rest of us don't. But I'm not naming it yet. You have to stay with me. Quick question before we dig in. You believe vinegar is too weak to kill a real weed, right? Most people do. Hold on to that thought, because by the end of this, you're going to feel a little silly about it. Part 1 is the easy battlefield, and it's the one that drives you the most insane day to day. I'm talking about the weeds in the hard places, the driveway cracks, the patio joints, the gravel, the fence line, the edge of the shed where the mower can't reach. This matters first because it's the part of your property you see every single time you pull in the driveway. So it's the failure that stings the most. Now, here's what you instinctively do. You grab that name brand jug, you mix it strong because you figure stronger is better, and you soak the leaves until they're dripping. And I get it. It feels powerful. You watch those weeds go yellow in a day or two and your brain says, done, victory. But here's what's actually happening beneath your feet. That product is built to travel down into the root system, and that takes time. And in hot, dry cracks where there's barely any moisture, a huge amount of that spray just sits on the surface and breaks down in sunlight before it ever finishes the job. So the top dies, the crown survives, and the plant regrows from a root you never touched. You didn't kill the weed, you gave it a haircut. Let me say that again, because it changes everything. When a weed turns yellow fast, that's not death. That's the plant cutting its losses up top while it protects the root below. So let's do it the way that actually works. The simplest version costs you almost nothing, and it's the $3 mix I opened with. You take 1 gallon of ordinary white vinegar, not the weak salad stuff. You want cleaning strength vinegar, the kind labeled around 30% acidity if you can get it, or standard household vinegar at 5% if that's what's in the cupboard. Just know the stronger one works far faster. Into that gallon, you stir 1 full cup of table salt until it dissolves, and then you add 1 tablespoon of plain dish soap. That's the whole recipe. The vinegar is an acid, and acid strips the waxy coating off the leaf and burns the plant tissue on contact, drawing the water straight out of the cells until the whole thing shrivels. The salt drives into the soil and makes it almost impossible for anything to pull up water, so the root can't recover, and the dish soap is the secret nobody mentions. It breaks the surface tension so the mix actually sticks to the leaf instead of beating up and rolling off into the dirt. Skip the soap and you've wasted half your jug. Here's how you use it. You wait for a hot, dry, still day, ideally when it's above 75 degrees Fahrenheit and there's no rain coming for at least 48 hours. You pour it into a cheap pump sprayer and you soak the weed until it's wet top to bottom, right down to where the stem meets the gravel. Then you walk away. Come back in a few hours and you'll see them already wilting. By the next morning, they're brown and crispy. And because you use salt in a place where you never want anything to grow again, like a gravel path or a driveway crack, that ground stays hostile for weeks. Now, if you want the more advanced version, the one for the really stubborn perennial weeds with deep taproots, you go boiling water first, then the mix. I'm serious. You boil a full kettle and you pour it directly onto the crown of the weed. The heat ruptures the plant cells instantly and shocks the root, and then your vinegar and salt mix finishes the job and keeps the soil dead. For a weed coming up through a patio joint, that 1 to 2 punch costs you pennies, and it's more reliable than anything in a $19 bottle. And I want to be very clear about what's at stake if you keep getting this wrong. Every time you only kill the top, you're buying yourself maybe 3 weeks of clean driveway before the regrowth punches through again. That's the same weekend, spent twice, 3 times, 4 times a summer. That's $40, $50, $60 of product down the drain on a job that should have cost you $3. And worse, every time a weed regrows from a surviving root, that root gets deeper and tougher, so next year's fight is harder than this year's. One universal prevention tip before we move on. Pull or kill weeds in the cracks when they're small, before they flower and go to seed. A single weed left to seed can drop thousands of new seeds into those same cracks, and you're not fighting one plant anymore, you're fighting next year's entire crop. And look, if this is exactly the kind of thing nobody ever tells you in the garden aisle, do me one quick favor and hit subscribe. That's genuinely all this channel does. Week after week, the stuff the man in the orange apron leaves out. One tap, and you'll never get walked to the expensive shelf again. And if you want the full system written out in one place, every mix, every timing, every soil secret the Amish have been using for a century, I put it all together in a guide called the Complete Amish Yard Field Edition. It's the same knowledge we cover here, but laid out as a step-by-step reference. You can follow property by property, season by season, without having to piece it together from memory. The link is in the description below if you want to take a look. All right, back to it. Part 2 is a completely different animal, and if you take what you just learned and use it here, you will destroy your own lawn. I mean that literally. Because part 2 is weeds inside your living grass, and that vinegar and salt mix doesn't know the difference between a dandelion and your fescue. It kills both, so everything changes. Here's the thesis, plain and blunt. You cannot win the weed war in your lawn with a spray bottle. You win it with the grass itself. Most people believe a weed problem is a weed problem, but actually a weed problem is almost always a thin grass problem wearing a costume. And here's the catastrophic mistake almost everybody makes. They see broadleaf weeds spreading through the lawn, they panic, and they reach for a strong non-selective killer, or they scalp the whole lawn down to the dirt trying to cut the weeds out. Then they wait, and in 3 or 4 weeks, they're staring at brown, dead patches of bare soil, which is the single most welcoming bed for new weed seeds on the entire planet. They didn't fix the lawn. They opened the door wider. That bare patch can take 2 to 3 months to fill back in with grass, and weeds will colonize it in a fraction of that time, because weeds are first responders to bare ground. That's their entire job in nature. So let's do this right. From the cheapest move to the one a professional reaches for last. Method 1, hand removal and spot treatment done correctly. For the big obvious offenders like dandelions and dock, you go after them the morning after a good rain or a deep watering when the soil is soft. You want a long screwdriver or a cheap weeding fork, and you drive it down beside the taproot and lever the whole root out in one piece. The reason this matters mechanically is that a dandelion can regrow from as little as 1 inch of root left in the ground. Snap the top off and you've just cloned it. Get the soft soil on your side and the entire root slides out clean. This costs you nothing but 10 minutes, and for a small lawn with a handful of weeds, it's genuinely all you need. Method 2, the selective broadleaf approach, and this is the one that won't hurt your grass. Here you want a selective broadleaf herbicide, the kind that targets weeds with wide flat leaves while leaving narrow grass blades untouched. The mechanism is genuinely clever. These products work on the broadleaf plant's growth system, sending it into overdrive so it literally outgrows its own ability to feed itself and collapses, while your grass, which is built completely differently, shrugs it off. You apply it when the weeds are actively growing on a calm day between 60 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and you spot spray the weeds rather than blanketing the whole yard. A small, concentrated bottle runs you around $15 to $20 and treats thousands of square feet, so your real cost per weed is almost nothing. The key detail people miss, Do not mow for at least 2 days before and 2 days after, because the weed needs full leaves to absorb the treatment and full roots feeding to carry it down. Method 3 is the one a professional would actually reach for first, and it barely involves killing anything. It's overseeding combined with feeding the grass, and it is the closest thing to a real cure that exists. Here's why it beats everything else. Weeds need light-hitting bare soil to germinate. That's the trigger. So you take grass seed, ideally a tall fescue or a ryegrass blend matched to your region, and you spread it at the rate on the bag, roughly 6 to 8 pounds per 1,000 square feet for a thin lawn, right after you've raked up the dead spots. Then you keep it damp for 2 to 3 weeks while it establishes. What you're doing is building a canopy so thick and so dense that sunlight never reaches the soil surface. No light at the soil, no weed germination, you're not fighting weeds anymore. You're starving them of the one thing they cannot live without. A professional knows that a dense, healthy lawn is the only weed barrier that gets stronger every year instead of weaker. Let the value of that sink in. Method 1 is your floor, the free fix for a few stragglers. Method 2 is your scalpel for an active outbreak. But method 3 is the one that changes the game permanently because it attacks the cause instead of the symptom. And that idea, attacking the cause, is exactly where we're headed next. Part 3, prevention. This is the thing I sealed away at the very start, the entire reason this video exists, and now I'm going to name it. It's the one move the Amish understand that the rest of us forget, and it ties both battlefields together into a single habit. It's this: feed the soil, not the plant. Build ground so healthy that weeds simply have nowhere to take hold in the cracks and in the lawn alike. Here's why it works mechanically. In one breath, weeds are opportunists that thrive in poor, compacted, starved ground where nothing else wants to live. So when you make your soil rich and your grass thick, you remove the exact conditions weeds depend on, and they lose the war before it even starts. The tool is simple and cheap. It's a layer of compost, what the old-timers just call good black dirt. You rake it in lightly so it settles down to the soil surface around the base of the grass. That single pass feeds the soil life, loosens the compaction that weeds love, and thickens your turf from the roots up. And here's the figure that should make you smile. Done every year, this one habit can cut your weed killer spending from $60 or $70 a season down to almost nothing, and it can save you a dozen weekends of spraying you'll simply never have to do again. So which one is for you? If you've got a small lawn and your main headache is the gravel, the driveway, and the patio cracks, the $3 vinegar, salt, and soap mix is your whole answer, and you never need anything else. If you've got broadleaf weeds spreading through otherwise decent grass, reach for the selective spray as your scalpel and hand pull the big ones. And if you're tired of fighting the same battle every single year on a larger property, you go straight to overseeding and the yearly compost top dressing, because that's the only path that makes next spring easier instead of harder. Now, once your grass thickens up and your soil gets healthy, you're going to run into a brand new problem you've never had to think about, and it catches everybody off guard: moss. Because the same shady, damp, compacted corners where weeds used to win are exactly where moss moves in next, and moss laughs at every weed killer on the shelf. If that's you, if you've got a green velvet carpet creeping across the north side of your lawn or up your shaded path, do me a favor and type the word moss down in the comments right now. Just that one word, so I know how many of you are fighting it. Because the next video shows you exactly how to clear moss for a couple of dollars without wrecking the grass underneath it, using a mechanism almost nobody understands. Subscribe so it lands in front of you the moment it drops, and you won't have to go looking. I'll see you in that one. Let me leave you with the part that really matters, because I don't want you walking away thinking this is about one magic jug. It isn't. The reason the big brand fails you year after year isn't that it's weak. It's that it treats the symptom and sends you back to the store. The $3 mix wins in the cracks because acid and salt finish the job where expensive chemistry breaks down in the sun. The selective spray wins in the lawn because it's a scalpel, not a hammer. And the compost wins everywhere because it removes the conditions weeds were waiting for. Most people spend their whole lives killing weeds, but actually the winners never fight weeds at all. They grow grass so strong and build soil so rich that the weeds simply give up and go somewhere easier. Think about what that actually buys you. Picture next July. Same Saturday morning, same warm coffee in your hand, But this time you walk out onto that patio and the cracks are clean, the fence line is clear, the gravel path you cleared in spring is still bare, and your lawn, instead of being a patchwork of dandelions and bare brown spots, is a thick, even green carpet that crowded the weeds out months ago without you spraying a thing. That's not luck. That's not a better chemical. That's you understanding the mechanism the orange apron guy was never trained to explain. And here's the honest truth about why this knowledge is so rare. There's no money in telling you to spend $3 once and then fix your soil so you never come back. The whole machine is built on you returning every 6 weeks with a credit card and a fresh layer of frustration. The Amish opted out of that machine 100 years ago, and all they really did was pay attention to the dirt under their boots. Vinegar to burn, salt to keep the ground hostile, soap to make it stick, boiling water for the stubborn ones, and good black compost to make sure the fight never starts again. That's the entire playbook, and now it's yours. So start this weekend. Mix your $3 jug and hit the driveway cracks first, because that's the win you'll see by tomorrow morning, and it'll keep you motivated. Then pick your battle in the lawn. Scalpel for an outbreak. Overseed for the long game. And book one afternoon this autumn for the compost top dressing, because that single afternoon is what turns next year from a war into a walk in the park. Do those 3 things in that order, and you will spend less, sweat less, and stand on a cleaner property than the neighbor who's still dragging that $19 jug out of the shed every few weeks, wondering why nothing ever sticks. Remember the thing you believed at the very start? That vinegar was too weak to kill a real weed? Now you know the truth. It was never about strength. It was about the acid, the salt, and the soap working together, hitting the leaf and the soil at the same time on the right hot, still day. You weren't using a weak product all those years. You were using the wrong strategy, and strategy costs $3. That's the whole secret. Cheap beats expensive when cheap understands the mechanism, and expensive is just hoping you come back. So go win your Saturday back. And don't forget to type moss in the comments if that green carpet is creeping in, because that's the next fight. And I've already got the $3 answer waiting for you.